I would like to invite up Averil, who is, let's give her a round of applause, shall we? That's the microphone. Okay, so Averil, just tell us just a little bit about you. Lots of people will know you here, but some people will have never met you. So just a little snapshot of you would be brilliant.
Okay. Can you hear me? At the back as well.
You have to put your microphone up to your mouth and then...
We'll start again. Let's start again. Can you hear me? At the back. Okay. Right, my name is Averil Hopwell. We just saw it up there. And also I'm known as Ave. This is for the people that don't know me. I've been here for 30 years in this church. Becca said, say you're single. Well, I am single. I don't know the relevance, but I'm single, right. I'm a bit past it now. It's going to be like this, yeah. So there you are. That's me.
Okay, so we are looking at stories and we're looking at new beginnings especially. I would be really interested to hear about the start of your life, the beginning of your life.
Okay.
Do you want to tell us about that?
Oh, yes, yeah. Well, it started, the first beginning in my life, obviously, was my birth. And the sensation I got was, whoosh, I've arrived.
Do you remember that then?
I do.
Do you?
I
don't remember that myself.
No, I'm sure a lot of people don't. But I thought, why? Like this. 2 days later, my father walked out the door, never came back. He left my mother and 3 children, including me, a 2-day-old baby, in rented property and no income. So that was my entrance into the world. My mother got, well, we called it depression then, and the war had started, so it was chaotic. And she just didn't know what to do. She couldn't afford the doctor. So she just walked out the house and literally walked parks, streets, anywhere, until it started to get dark, and then she would come back. Now, I was told this because I'd already got my eyes open, you know. And I was left alone. And then neighbours started to try and help. And my sister, who was 13 years old, and I got a brother 15, my sister left school. She killed her education to look after me. And I had a 13-year-old girl who'd never experienced babies, right, looking after me. That was my first few years.
So how did that affect your relationship with your father?
Quite honestly, it did affect me. Because unknown to me as a baby, I took on board all the rejection that my mother was feeling, my sister, and my brother. I soaked it in somehow, and I felt rejected, and I felt second hand. When I was about, 8, 10, I broke my leg, and I got it in a plaster cast, and I was hobbling along on a crutch, and I decided to go to my brother's house. And when I got there, my father, I can't say dad because he never was, my father was there. And he moved out the room. And it impacted me. I thought, there's something wrong with me that this man can't stand me. And I had to ask him for a lift home because I broke my leg. And he said, no, ask your brother. Walked out the house and out of my life. And something died in me that day. I didn't know what it was, but there was something definitely wrong in me. And it was rejection being impounded into my life.
So you grew up, and you found God, and then you you decided that you were going to go on a bit of an adventure with God then, and you ended up in Honduras. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yes.
How old were you when that when you went?
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s. Okay.
Okay, can I just say about what God did for me? That's
You-
the most important
Yeah.
bit, isn't
Say
it?
what
eh?
God did.
If God touches your life, you're not the same. And so I'd never been to church. I didn't know, nobody had ever preached the gospel to me or my family. And I was angry at a God that I didn't know. Can you understand? I blamed him for everything. I blamed him for rejection. I blamed him if I failed an exam. Oh, I just did. I had to give it somebody. I had to punch somebody for the lack in my life. Right? And so one day, I was walking through a department store door, which was similar to Wickbourne, and I got stuck. My feet wouldn't move. And I was getting angry, and the man behind me was getting very angry. He said, "Will you move out the way?" you know. And I knew something supernatural was happening. And I turned to God and I said, "If you're there, like that, I'm here." And I meant it. I was angry. If he's bothering my life, he'd better be doing something good with me, because I was fed up of all the lack. I was fed up of being second class and rejected by people. Do you understand? And I got saved in that second. No gospel, no person coming putting their arms around me saying, "Jesus loves you." He did it. He did it. I walked out that department store saved. And I thought, oh, well, what do good people do? They go to church. So next Sunday, I went to church on my own. And I walked in a church that was, dead as a dodo. I sat looking at the stained glass windows to try and figure out who that was not knowing it was Jesus. That was how I got saved, and you don't turn away in that. Is that all right?
That's
Share that?
fantastic. Amazing.
Then the call.
So, yeah, tell us about when you went to Honduras.
Yes.
And some of the stories, because I know there are amazing stories that happen there.
Yeah. I hope you're all right with this. Are you? Wave if you are. Oh, good. Right. I gave Becca a wave earlier when she said, "Have you got a story to tell?" I was doing this and she ignored me.
Sorry.
This is church. This is family. Okay. So then I got a call on my life, and I was really pleased. An evangelist came for one meeting. He was American, and he said he got a school. And I thought, oh, I don't want one of those that you study for 16 hours a day, and then go to bed. And he said, no, it's a practical school. He said, I'll take you into Mexico, I'll this and that and the other. And I said, okay. So I was making plans to go, mid-20s. And there was a nurse in the church, and we were quite friendly. And she said, oh, I'm going to the States. Why don't we go together? She said, I'm going into Mexico to a clinic. So we travelled together. Now, I won't go into a lot of detail. Let's say when we got to Decatur, Georgia, where she was due to go into Mexico, there was no clinic. Right? So she said, oh, what do I do? I'll come with you. So unbeknown to this evangelist, 2 of us were on the way. And we travelled. It was 4,000 miles, I think, down the east coast to Decatur, and 3,000 miles across the south to the Los Angeles place where I was going, on a Greyhound bus. And you'll remember, some of you, at a certain point in time, Britain said you can only take £50 with you. Anybody remember that? So we travelled on £50. Well, it soon went. And we didn't have anything to eat or anything like that. So we just had to pray our way across the States, to be honest. And God got us there. And they took the nurse, my friend, in. So we went into Mexico and did all sorts of things. And then he went to Honduras. I'd never heard of it. And he came back broken. He came back a broken man. He said, I have seen things that people should never see. And this was mostly to do with babies. Now, what they did, they just threw them under bridges and the water took them, or they put them on rubbish heaps where ants were, red ants. You know what red ants do? They go up every hole in your body. They enter and eat you. They go in your eyes, your ears, your nostrils, your mouth, down your throat, and other places. He was broken. He said, we have to go and help these children. And we prayed for months and months and months for a couple to come, and nobody came. So in the end, we sort of twigged that maybe God was asking 2 girls to go, which is ridiculous. And we said, we'll go. And he said, I'm not taking you, he's leaving you down there. But he did. Because when God's in it, God keeps making a way. He doesn't take it off you. You find you're praying about these children. And in the end, you have to go. There's no question. So we had a smattering of Spanish, like hello, goodbye. How much is that cabbage? That sort of stuff. And a lot of finger work. And we went to an area called Tegucigalpa, which is an Indian name. And we went to a small place called Belén, and in Spanish that means Bethlehem. Well, it does in Honduras. And we thought, oh, great, this is, being spiritual. This is lovely, But at night, we soon found out, when the red lights went on, where we were. We were in the red light district, and they knew we were coming. So we went to the hospital to look for babies. And you've heard the dying rooms of China. Well, they were there as well. There was 4 babies to a cot. They couldn't put them in the right way up. They put them in sideways. They had no blankets, no pillows, no diapers. They were naked on a plastic sheet in 80-odd degrees heat. And we went round. The room was full of cots. And we had to choose who to save. So we ended up with 6. And we brought them home, and we started our new beginning. While we were there, we had a war. And it was between the neighbouring company. Now, you couldn't tell the 2 people apart because they were like brothers. Do you understand? It's like a Welsh person and an English person, a Scottish person and an English person. So you didn't know who was who. And while we were in the house, planes going over and all sorts, I was putting the babies, 6 babies, under the bed for safety. And while that was happening, there was a bang on the door, a terrific bang on the front door. I mean, it was a crowd of men. And they were saying, let us in, let us in, let us in. And Josie went and put her back to the door, and she says, no, and tried to hold the door. I was putting babies under the bed. A man ran in the back door, an El Salvadorian. They were chasing him. And stuck a knife between my shoulder blades. And my first reaction, I'm just telling you reality. I'm telling you reality. It can happen here. While I was saying, oh no, don't do that. I've got 6 babies under the bed. While I was trying to tell him this, right? The men at the front door were doing their best to get in. And as I watched, I could see the door cave in. As I watched, I saw a white mist enter the room. It went over the door, over the windows, over Josie, and stayed. And the men started yelling outside. I don't know what was outside. Could have been an angel. But this was like an angelic mist, and it just fortified the door and the windows. They couldn't get in, and they ran off. In the meantime, this man has got his knife between my shoulder blades, and I could feel it cutting me, and his arm around my neck, choking the life out of me. And I said, no, don't. I couldn't speak. And he let go like that. And I thought, hello, that white mist has moved. Do you understand? We are helpless without God. You can think you can do it. You can't do it. But if God puts you in a situation, he'll do it. And I was free. And so was Josie. We were unharmed. We got the babies out under the bed, carried on living. Then the police came, took our passports, so we couldn't get out of the country.
And then there was another really dangerous situation that you were in again, wasn't there? When you were, at this point, you had gone from the house that you were in and you were up in an orphanage where you and Josie were looking after a lot of the children, and they were growing up there, up the mountain,
Yes,
was it?
yes.
And then can you tell us about what happened one day when a man came and wanted you to take his child?
You'll like this. We had 23 kids by this time, and we had moved. God had provided a farm for us in a valley, and it was called the Valley de Los Angeles, the Valley of the Angels. So we were happy there. But there was an Indian tribe there as well. They weren't happy with us because we were the only two white faces up that mountain. There was nobody else, just Honduranians and Indians. And so one day I was working, and I saw this man coming up the drive with a little one like this, and he was kind of dragging him. And then I saw a uniform, and I realised he was a policeman. Now, if you've ever been abroad, you don't mess with policemen. You just say, yes, sir, yes, yes, sir. And he came, and he almost threw the child at me like this, and he said, whatever, he said. And I said, we're full. We're full. We haven't got any more beds, kind of thing. And that didn't please him. So he drew his pistol out, stuck it in my chest, and said, woo, 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 again, right? And I said, I think we've just got room for one more. You learn with the Lord, don't you? You'd probably done it better than me, but I did the best I could.
And then tell us what happened to those little boys that came, because there were three of them, weren't there? What happened to those little boys?
Oh. Okay. Somebody brought 3 boys. One was about 4, one was 7, 6, and one was about 10, we'll say. Because nobody knew their ages. They weren't registered. Do you understand? They weren't registered. And they came, and their clothes were so worn and torn, it was indecent. And the man that brought them said, well, pick who you want. Pick who you want of the 3, And we looked at them and we said, we can't split these boys, because we learned their story. What had happened during the war, the mother had gone mad, insane. The father had cleared off because he didn't want to fight the war and left the boys. And the one that was about 10 had to take care of them. And nobody would take them in because they could have been El Salvadorian, you see. So they had to walk the fields and the mountains. And they drank from the rivers. and they ate grass to keep alive. So you can imagine the effect on them, you know. And they stood there, and the eldest boy was shaking with fear, I think, with fear. Will they take us in? Will they turn us away? So anyway, I looked at Josie. Josie looked at me and said, well, take the lot, right? And we did. Do you know those boys? The eldest one is a pastor. The second one is running a boys' home in Tegucigalpa for those that are on the streets. The third one got shot because they forced him to go and fight. Those three were worth everything we went through. And we went through a lot. Those three stand forever in the kingdom.
Now, Averil, your story is amazing, and I know that you have only just touched on.
Oh yeah.
It's just a few tiny little things about what's happened in your life, if people want to hear more, then please do chat to Averil and later, and then another time. We also have recorded you on the breakfast, haven't we?
Yes.
So if people want to hear more, but just one last question. What would you, if you could say something to us as a church here, what would you like to say?
Well, first of all, I would say love and appreciate the family of God. You might not get on with everybody, you know, but get on with the family of God, because that's what he's sowing everything into. And I would like to thank your dad. Sorry, David, if I embarrass you. But when I came back to England, I was in the north. And my brother-in-law was in the Midlands. And he had a verse. God gave him a verse. And it was about Phoebe. And is it all right if I read it to you? Because it did my head in. Just bear with me. Bear with. I like it when you laugh. Thank you so much, your encouragement.
It's from Miranda, isn't it?
Okay. Yes, it is.
It is. Do you like that?
Yeah,
then?
but are you human like me? Do you watch telly? Right, here it goes. This is what God gave to Bill. Receive her with a Christian welcome and help her in whatever matter she may require assistance from you. That's pinning him down, isn't it? And so he said to his wife, we've got to contact Averil. We've got to. So she did, and she said, are you all right? And I said, oh, yeah, fine. Because what had happened to me was my contract had ended with Ernie, the premium bonds. That's where I worked. The contract had ended, so I had no job. My flat was demolished because they wanted to build a flyover to get onto the freeway. And I had no money, nowhere to live. A friend took me in, but they said, otherwise, you'll have to go under the pier at Blackpool. Do they do that in Brighton? Sleep under the pier.
I think they do, yeah.
Yeah. They said, well, you'll have to go onto the pier at Brighton. And I said, what? You know, I said, come on, God, you've got to find me a place to live. God gave him a verse. My sister phoned, she said, look, if ever you need a home, it's here. She said, oh, but I forgot to tell you, we've moved. She said, we've moved south. We've moved to East Preston. See? See God's plan? He didn't want me in Derby, where they were before. So she said, if ever you want to come, come. So I said, okay, I'll ask God, you know. I'll ask God, being spiritual. So I did. And this is what he gave me. Acts 8:26. It was Philip in Samaria. He said, rise up and go south. Thank you for listening. You're listening, I can tell. He said, rise up and go south. And I swallowed hard. He said, so, and then the next verse said, Philip got up and went. And so did I. I just packed my bags and went.
Brilliant.
I've got something.
Yeah.
I'm bursting to tell you. Okay. So I came south and they said, oh, do you know, we've been looking around for a church. And we're going to Rustington Fellowship. Would you like to come? I said, yeah, okay, I'll come. Now, this is where David comes in. Because we went in and John Smale was there, and God bless him, he's with the Lord now. He did a wonderful, wonderful job. And David Thatcher. And I looked at them and I thought, they are godly men, you know. And so I asked God quickly as I was coming out the meeting. I said, I asked him 5 questions. I said, come on, you've got to tell me whether this is the right place. I don't want to waste time. And the first one was, do they love God? Do they love each other? Think about your church. Do they preach the gospel? Are people getting saved? And do they love the community? Those 5 questions, each one got a tick. Thank you, David. And that's why I want to thank him publicly. Because over the years, you know, he's got a father in spirit. And he fathered the flock. He fathered people year after year after year. He fathered me. Do you know, I'd never had a touch from a father. David fathered me in a godly way and helped me to get where God wanted me to be. So thank you, David, and I applaud you. And let me tell you, the man is still doing it. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Averil. That's absolutely amazing. Thank you. Let's give Averil a round of applause, shall we?
Thank you.